All right. Okay, we have people joining now. So Ryan,
My screen's still sharing, right?
Yeah, it's still sharing.
Okay.
All right. Feel free to start whenever you feel ready.
Okay, I'm good. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Ryan Vancher. I'm the VP of Client Success and a co-founder of CourseKey. We really appreciate everybody taking the time to spend a few minutes with us today. Today's webinar, we're actually going to explore how one of our partners, OCM BOCES, has transformed their attendance process, specifically around timeliness, accuracy, reliability, and just kind of talking about what it was like pre-CourseKey and what their experience has been like most recently going through that process. Now, keep in mind, I know, Matt, we've only known each other for maybe about 5 weeks now since we've had our introduction. Right. So definitely interested to hear, with the COVID issues and, things like that, how you were able to kind of pivot and what your plan looked like. And so, having the pleasure of introducing you, this is Matt Tarolli. Is that how you say it?
Yep.
And he's the coordinator of adult programs over at OCM BOCES. And before we dive into this, there's a few housekeeping items that we'll cover. This webinar one is going to be recorded, so everybody will get an email link later in the week once we have a chance to get it all packaged up. And we're going to have some time for Q&A at the end of the session, so feel free to submit questions or comments along the way, and we'll make sure to take some time to answer those towards the end. Okay. Now, just a little bit about CourseKey and who we are. We're a 6-year-old education technology company. We build teaching and training software specifically for career education schools. In our experience, we found most of the tools out there, they weren't really well suited for vocational training and career experience. There wasn't a real big focus on clock hour attendance and the process and policies that go along with that. Experiential learning, nobody really was enforcing the compliance standards accreditors wanted to see. And so that's where we spent our time and kind of what we'll talk about today. And then obviously, we want to make sure that we hear from Matt and them over at OCM BOCES. And so if you want to just give us a quick background on yourselves and your organization and what you guys do in the career service space.
Absolutely. So I'm the coordinator of adult programs. We're a small technical school in Syracuse, New York. We service approximately 250 full-time training students. They're here mainly during the day in a variety of different technical and medical programs. We also have several other functions in the community, but the main focus is full-time training for 6 to 12 months. Students collect federal financial aid, so we're accredited through the Council of Occupational Education and New York State Education Department.
Nice. And what types of programs do you guys run there? I know we were talking about welding and things like that.
Yep. So on the trade side, it's welding, construction, electrical, HVAC, and automotive tech. And on the medical side, our most popular is our practical nursing program, medical assisting, dental assisting, cosmetology, sterile processing, and office technology. So it's a wide range. Yeah.
Run the spectrum on both sides of the field, huh?
Yeah.
Cool. So, well, I guess let's kind of start off, and those are really all the slides we have for right now. So I'm going to stop sharing. Maybe we can make this a little more, one-one. But for our end, what we find really curious is how different schools have been dealing with the pandemic. We've noticed there's been a lot of, adjustments to the course models. You had to work with different, mediums versus, like online versus ground labs. And so how have you guys adapted to the pandemic? What models are you currently using? And do you see this as temporary or something that you guys will continue, once sort of this COVID era is over?
Yeah, so right now we have the majority of our classes are fully in-person live. We have a couple of classes that are hybrid models. So we have half the class at home and the other half in person. But I think the biggest issue is anytime a student has been quarantined, obviously we continue that education and attendance remotely or online, and so that's given us the opportunity to do that. There are a couple of classes that we do foresee. We wanted to look at hybrid or online classes in the past, and this has given us the opportunity. We do think a couple of classes, especially office technology, will eventually go into a blended or hybrid model in the future. So I think it is going to lead to more down the line. And, you know, CourseKey obviously fits right in, giving us the ability to take attendance in several different arenas.
Right.
or
And then
locations.
with the way that you guys, where you had kind of mentioned the blended now, is that something where you're having to get, you know, your programs approved by accreditors, or is it something where, you know, it's something where you kind of have some flexibility, or how are they handling that there in New York? Because we have clients all over the country. I'm curious what your local, you know, options are.
Yep, that's a great question. So right now, the state ed and our accrediting body, COE, have waived any change in implementing education. You know, so obviously the hybrid or online models have been waived. I believe it's through December 30th. I could be mistaken on the date. So right now it's been waived, but we expect that to change at some point, you know, where we'll have to get approvals to do that.
And would you agree? I mean, we've been hearing, you know, COVID accelerated technology adoption, so to speak, and not just education, but a lot of different segments, you know, over the last 6 months. Would you agree? You know, you had mentioned you work with trade students, you work with allied health, you know, and those types of students. You know, have you seen, you know, your students' adoption of technology have to pick up, and how have your instructors and how has the students been dealing with, you know, this new requirement of using technology, whether it's in the classroom or in a lab, even in clinicals and externships? You know, how has that kind of played itself out?
Immensely. I think we were traumatized in March. I think it was like technology trauma,
Overload for
where
sure.
we were forced to do that. And so it's really remarkable how incredible our staff has taken to being able to adapt to changes and to be and being able to assign things electronically and then accept things electronically. Students, we've forced them this fall class we just started. We've really put a focus on. They were forced to enroll remotely. They were forced, so everything was remote to begin with. They were forced to take our entrance exam remotely. Our financial aid meeting was remote. So before they even, our orientation was remote. So before they even stepped foot on campus, they were already, you know, exhibiting their technology skills. And so, and so we were really at ease, actually being able to, you know, with CourseKey, you know, telling students, look at, open up your phone and download this app, you know, it happened like that. That's a year ago. I'm not sure if that would have been like that.
But maybe a little more pushback, right?
Yeah.
Especially probably on the trade side. And obviously we mentioned earlier, we've been working together maybe 5 weeks now. And so we went from me and you meeting and sort of a kickoff meeting. Oh, lights went off. They got a timer on you?
Sorry about that.
Got to do jumping jacks in the middle of the
Yeah.
And with us only being on your campus for 5 weeks, let's kind of talk about, you know, before the 5 weeks, you know, what was the process, you know, and can you describe what it was like before we had our kickoff? And then obviously 5 weeks later, you know, going through our soft launch and you guys being pretty much fully rolled out, you know, what has it looked and felt like to your team since then?
Yeah. So for years, I've been with BOCES 22 years, and I've had a lot of different positions, and I've been an adult ed 5 years. So I don't know when our original attendance system, but what it was a hand scan. So we had hand scan stationed throughout the building that spoke to one program that was only accessible on one desktop. So we had 11 or 12 teachers that were only able to access. I could show you that I don't have a schedule anymore. We had a weekly schedule where teachers had 1 to 2 hours a week to actually go in, log into the attendance, the attendance desktop and then, edit or look at their attendance for their students. So it was, and then obviously the whole, 230 hands in one hand scan. You can imagine now what
Yeah, COVID friendly for sure, huh?
yeah. So that's where we were at, and just that it was time. I've been researching attendance systems for 2 or 3 years now, and we came really close a year or two ago with a particular company in Syracuse. It was, and something fell through with the budget. And then as we progressed through the pandemic, we were able to procure, and we continued to research attendance systems. And, it really led to, I would have liked to have rolled out CourseKey a little earlier, but, between the budget, the pandemic, enrollment, not even being sure that we were going to start fall classes.
Right. Got to make sure the doors are open first.
There was a lot that unfortunately fell into our lap and your lap at CourseKey, where we said, all right, here we go. We have the means and the ability to do this. And so that's kind of our history there of where we started with attendance and how we ended up here. I think I answered your question.
How long would it take before, like yourself, obviously, maybe somebody who relies on more attendance records than just a specific course, with that process where it kind of sounded there was like a station, a queue all the time, how long did it take before you guys felt like your LDAs and like your reports were really accurate? And what sort of work did it take after the fact, in terms of changes, adjustments? Was there a lot of that happening?
With our old system or new system?
Right, with the old system.
Oh, with the old system, it was an incredible amount of time. Like I said, a teacher had 1 or 2 hours at a time. I would have to wait and kind of work my way in. Our financial aid would ask teachers for reports, and then they could only get the reports during the. So it was an incredibly inefficient system for getting any kind of reports. If a student wanted to know what their time was, it was like, well, my data to get the computer is Friday, so I'll let you know.
Got it. Yeah.
I mean, it was literally that. It was that bad. And so the time it took for the hand scans, not to get into the details, but the scanners to actually speak to or download the data onto the desktop, you would have to sit there and watch the wheel. So I think I answered your question. I would bring music especially when I had to make a lot of edits, because
something to read.
See, honestly, I mean, it was. So it was.
And then was there something in particular? I mean, I know COVID was probably a huge catalyst, but was there anything else just about the process where you were like, obviously a touch-free solution is a lot better, where everybody's putting their hand on something for attendance. Anything besides that really made you guys look for a change, like the first time pre-COVID, where you said you were kind of in the market, but it fell through? Was there anything that kind of made you on the hunt for that, or what was it that kind of where you're looking for another solution?
Just the inefficiency and the amount of time that it cost our organization to do attendance.
Simple process.
Which is kind
and
of
what else did you consider?
fun,
I know you said you looked at us, and you were out there for a while looking for a good solution. Who else were you looking at, and then why did you ultimately choose to work with CourseKey?
Yeah, we looked everywhere I could find online. It was more employee based. I really, and again, maybe I wasn't doing good Google searches or something, but we could not find student clock hour companies. And I don't know if there's any, honestly, I'm not even sure if you have competition in that arena, to be honest, because we couldn't find them. So a lot of them were like time and alarm companies and
more credit hour focused if it was attendance.
Yeah, where they adapted their attendance systems, but nothing, I couldn't find the right fit. We were thinking about doing retinal scans, facial scans. At one point we had a quote for like a thumbprint, like would they just print, but it was all based around employee clock in and clock out, not school
Gotcha. So it was our focus on the clock hours student tracking that really helped you make the decision.
100%. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
And then when we first got to campus, I know we always like to start with in that kickoff meeting, like, what are your goals, for implementing us? Because not all clients have the same goals, but I think there's an overlapping theme of, attendance reliability, timeliness, accuracy, especially when you're maybe a Title IV funded, institution or something like that, where
Right.
you're constantly looking at, LDAs and the attendance records to make sure that you can draw on funds and stuff like that.
Right.
What was your goal, outside of the obvious of we want to have a more shored up, compliance driven attendance process? Was there anything else you guys were hoping to achieve by putting something like us in place?
Yes, 100%. We were compliant. Our system worked with the hand scan, again, because teachers could monitor and adjust, but 100%, we have to report attendance down to the minute. And, we have a 10% rule where students are dismissed if they go over 10% of the total clock hour, and that all aligns with our accreditation and our, what we're trying to do to preach attendance. So this just obviously was the best way to do it from a reporting standpoint. We have another audit in I get goosebumps thinking about it. I think 2022 is our next COE visit. And so, we feel great now as a leadership team that we had a smooth transition. We can show attendance, and this is, it's a very, like I said, we're at this point a very efficient process, and it meets all our needs.
And which tech did we choose for you guys? Because we offer a range of technology, right? Depending on the different environments. What are you guys using right now?
So we're using QR code, and eventually we will use GPS for our clinical rotations for our practical nursing program.
And how are the faculty and students what's the feedback on the QR code bid?
A piece of cake.
Nice. Okay.
It's a piece of cake. So if you walk, we're in one floor. If you walk around a building, they're at the door. That was like, they're there. It is simple. I've had no reports of people, having glitches on their phone or really any issues.
Awesome.
So far so good. Like the QR code is really easy. We haven't started the GPS. When we do have students at home, so there are some students that are home, like
if they get COVID or something like that.
Yeah, our teachers sent, or they don't have COVID, but they were forced to quarantine because they were, the instructors can just send the alphanumeric code, and students can log in and log in that way with I guess it's called no technology, but I haven't had any complaints on that end either. And so I'm typically the one that gets complaints. So
nice. Good to hear it from the source.
Yeah.
And then let's kind of take it up to like a higher level of the campus, because I know, you probably teach as well, but you're also sort of running some of the programs there. And one of the things that we hear a lot is, this kind of transition from being really reactive when it came to attendance, like finding out, okay, we got to intervene with the student. We're a few days into this. Let's try to get them. Versus knowing, in real time, like through a dashboard where you can see live attendance everywhere and know exactly who's in class while it's happening. How has that transition been for you and the leadership team there to go from waiting for the records to get in to already having the records available to take action on? Can you kind of explore that a little bit?
Yeah. So in the past, I would get a report. I would have to sit on that god awful desktop and pull reports for all 11 of our programs. It took forever. And then I would, or myself or my administrative assistant would look through to see who's at certain percentages missed, and then circle those, and then create warning letters, and then call those students down the following week and warn them where they're at with time, because they had no way of knowing. Most students know when they start missing days, but the nickel and dime attendance people really didn't, I'm at 20 hours or I'm already at 40 hours. And so it was extremely, again, it was just an inefficient use of all our time. to do attendance that way. So this still remains to be seen. Again, we're only a month into students doing it, but as of right now, students, again, knowing exactly how much they've been there makes it much easier on our end, to monitor through the dashboard and through grades. But then it's much easier to just get in touch with them to say, oh, this is where you're at. They can look at their phone and you can say, oh yeah, you've missed X amount. Whereas in the past, it was always this whole process.
So from the student side, that feedback loop has been pretty valuable where, they might have had to come to you to find out, hey, am I on track? And again, that's
Correct.
that reactive sort of, even the students were in a reactive state, right?
Absolutely.
And now when they
right.
leave the class, you're saying in their pocket, they're just looking at their device and they know how much time I'm missing, right?
Right. When you say reactive, right, and it was always delayed, right? Because I'd have to pull the report, do a warning letter, and that was like, a week later. So it would be like, well,
Right.
On this date you were at 22 hours missed, and they'd say, well, I already missed another day. So I'm like, oh, I guess and right, it was not in real time. It was it just didn't work. And so at this point, to date, the instructors, really, it's made the instructors more aware that they know it in real time. Whereas in the past, they didn't even know their students' attendance in real time because they had to go to that. So,
and do you guys have registrars or who's responsible for your student records generally? Like, who would the students have to go to find out if they are on track, if the instructors didn't know it? Is that a hat you wear also?
Yeah, it would be myself or our practical nursing coordinator. Typically would be the next level up. It would be myself would be the next level. And then
so from like your registrar hat, the way in terms of like impact for your daily workflow there, it's quick access to information that not only do you already know the students have it, but it's transparent, right? Everybody knows how much time the students have. Have
Correct.
you seen any, from the adjustment standpoint, again, thinking from that registrar hat, has it been easier to see when and why these changes are happening if you wanted to investigate? Now that you've got sort of that online bank statement, so to speak, of debits and credits of time.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. So I know automatically, right. When, who's there, you can look at like, who's absent. If I want to look for somebody, if I'm wondering if somebody's here, I can look and see that. So, but as far as looking at the instructors and, looking at the dashboard each day, it's become kind of my, I just check the dashboard to see and if somebody, we've had a couple days where nobody had checked in, and I'm like, that's odd. And then obviously the instructor either missed the QR code, or we had one group off campus for a day, and so they were going to adjust. I think our instructors are still adjusting time more than they need to. I think because it's so easy to do that they don't mind doing it. Compared to what we're
enabling them
a little bit, and that's on me. That is on me from
I think one thing that we hear a lot, especially on the instructor side, is we always tell the faculty, you win when you don't really have to work with CourseKey, because it's a student-centered process, and they tend to take ownership once they know what their time is, and they'll even say, hey, I don't think I have my right time, right? And so have you seen students own the process a little bit more from what it used to be?
Yep, absolutely. So I'm seeing less students, which means they're owning it, right? I mean, normally in this case, if we were in the hand scan system, myself and our support staff would have people coming down periodically saying my hand didn't work in the scanner, or I missed the punch, or I missed the scan, so I got it, and this instructor can't give me their time until Thursday. I really need to know my time, so I'm actually seeing, I don't see any of that, which means they're owning it. that they see it. The instructor's able to answer those questions in real time a lot quicker. So,
and just on that point too, I know a lot of the times when I work with clients, they kind of go from what they might call like a C-level task, data entry, chasing down records, trying to make sure people know what they're doing, and when we free you up with what you just said, not really spending that kind of time anymore. Have you noticed like any other areas where you do get to invest the time that you would typically spend, standing in line at the, attendance processing computer or whatever else you guys did? Like, what do you get to do now with that time?
Whoa, that's a loaded question.
Besides have lunch. I mean, I'm sure you get lunch.
I don't get lunch, right? No, we're a small technical school. We all wear, I don't want to say just myself, but we all wear a lot of hats. So,
yeah,
I feel like I'm both. I mean, not only do I'm in charge of supervising our staff, and giving them feedback instructionally. But I do a lot with the budget. I mean, that's a big part of it. I'm our main recruiter. So so I go out and do a lot of the recruiting. Our VA rep, myself, and an admin support. So we all just wear it like a small school. We all wear more hats. So,
so is it safe to say you're spending a little more time in those other departments versus wearing that registrar hat?
Oh my goodness, yes. Like this
Okay.
just makes life so much easier. When I can just look at the dashboard and then be done with it for the day.
And looking forward, these kind of last two, or maybe because even we've been working together 5 weeks, and now that you kind of have, you guys are one of my more stable accounts, your dashboards look great all the time. How do you see this moving forward? As like, I know you had mentioned, you're a lot more confident if an audit comes, right? If somebody comes by the campus, you guys have a system to point to, tracks it, logs it. Other than the confidence, is there anything else you feel moving forward that you can improve with this system to help you stay either more, I know you guys were in compliance, but be more in compliance or more proactive, or improving your processes and things like that the accreditors look for? What is your kind of future plans with us as we grow together?
That's a good question. I think that the staff is still, like I said, the one goal is and I think you preached it early on, is the staff should have no adjustments or interaction with it eventually. Like the less they interact, the more efficient it is, because students are owning the entire process.
Right.
So that's one goal. I mean, we're still in the early stages where staff don't mind, are in there and they're still figuring out lunch and break and making minor changes for students. And we have students that miss a scan out here and there. And eventually we'll get, again, I think one goal is to get to the point where staff are good. There is no more
what it was like before CourseKey.
yeah, no more adjusting things. But I think long-term, I know our practical nursing programs will be using the GPS system for certain sites. I think ideally in some of our other programs, when we do internships, it would be nice if we could use that also.
Right. Yeah.
Not sure yet, but we're because we send students all over the place, so it would be a little tricky. But that's a nice thought, and ultimately it is just simply a very nice backdrop to compliance when our accreditors come in again. That's our goal, is to just be able to instantly provide that information and not hash over it for months or days.
Right. And then what about your retention strategies? Like now having access to this data, I mean, where do you see this helping you guys help more students cross the finish line?
Yeah, I mean, that's the goal, right? Absolutely. That's a huge goal, is that if they are in real time, they can see it. Again, if I'm not meeting with them, to give them warnings at 20, 40, 60 hours, which what we would do. And that would take up a huge part of my time. And as actually, we were going to hand that over to our social worker, but she's out for a couple months. we are very excited as a staff to see how it affects retention. We're obviously very optimistic that if they're looking at it, if students are looking at it all times, they're gonna they can, you know, monitor it themselves. The other thought process we had was students that do go over their our attendance will end up just withdrawing, right? They're going to know, oh, I'm out. I went over my time. I have to withdraw, versus somebody in administration saying you are dismissed due to attendance at this point.
Right.
Unfortunately, at this point, they're monitoring at all times. They know, you know, there is no question.
And then outside of compliance and retention, is there any other areas you see, you know, CourseKey creating value down the road, like any unexpected benefits kind of thing that you didn't really think?
Keeps my teachers happier, which makes me happier. I think that's a good question. No, I think just efficiency overall, as an, you know, just kind of organizational efficiency is really where it's in the long run. If you compound, again, if you start talking about time, right? If you start like, look, I'm saving an hour a day, or, you know, 5 hours a week times 52 weeks times 3 years. I mean, that's ideally, that means that time was spent, you know, helping students become better employees, right? You know, I'm spending more time in classrooms, you know, there's that downhill effect, which is what we're really hoping for.
Gotcha.
At a
And
macro level.
if you hear a little noise in the background, I got yard work apparently happening outside.
Oh, no problem.
And just the last question before we go to the Q&A. I mean, we always like to just kind of hear what the future plans are for the partners we work with. Like, what's next for you guys at OCM BOCES? Do you have any, you know, other than getting through COVID like everybody else, do you guys have any, you know, upcoming things you'd like to share with the guests, or anything that you think would be worth mentioning?
Yeah, you know, one thing I forgot to mention is we do have 2 satellite locations, where in the past, again, not to get off track, to talk about inefficiency, we would have have them sign in. The teacher would send that weekly to a teacher here. We paid that teacher here an extra hour a week, and they would keep track of that. That was when I got here, and that
was because they still had to put it into this system over
our
here,
system here, right?
Wow. Okay.
It was, again, I'm embarrassed to even say so that was. So now that we have 2 offsite locations, you know, obviously it's made attendance simple, but big picture goals is to expand what programs that we can offer at those 2 other satellite locations. We're working on that.
Right.
There's a county just south of us that we're really trying to expand. It's rural. It needs, and there's a demand. So,
nice. Okay.
I think
well, we got a few questions coming in.
Yeah, please.
Let's take a look at those, because I know we got about maybe 10 minutes left. The first question asks, how long does it take to get the CourseKey attendance process up and running? Obviously, Matt, with you guys, it took us about, I think, from the time we met to the time we launched, it was maybe a week or 2. I know.
It was like, I think it was a little over a week.
Yeah, about 10 days, right?
We hit the you know, pay button, so to speak.
Yeah. It took us about 10 days working with OCM BOCES and Matt. And again, he was a great champion. You know, it was a project that was top of mind for everybody. And so when you have a whole school really trying to make the transition, I mean, we've seen it happen in as little as 48 hours. You know, if it, you know, at the beginning of COVID, when it was like, we need to keep the doors open. Typical clients, though, we've seen it can take anywhere, if, you know, our more integrated clients who might have, you know, 10, 15 different schools across different locations, they're more on the integrated side. And so that could take a little bit longer to get the systems to communicate. But for the most part, it can be anywhere from, you know, I would say 2 to 4 weeks, all the way up to, you know, 6 to 8, depending on the type of account we're working with.
Yeah. So it was, right. It was probably about 8 days where we said, okay. And then we got our teachers trained. We were actually delayed getting student emails We didn't have student emails on the first day, which had we had student emails on the first day, they would have been
Right.
in the
Yeah.
system, day one. And so that delayed. We got the emails, they were uploaded, and our teachers and students were, are rolling with it.
So the next question is, how does the attendance process work with CourseKey? And obviously you described your process now where, there's coming in, you have your QR codes taped up and they're just scanning the QR codes to check into their classes. They'll scan it when they check out. We have other types of technology too, depending on your environment, right? So Matt had also mentioned, starting out externships and offsites using our GPS technology. Some of our clients, he mentioned internship, they like to combine the QR code and the GPS to make sure that, they're not only at a physical location, but they're also scanning this code. We have sound, which is the most secure technology that we have, where it plays from a speaker and students can just pick it up on their device. But the underlying theme here is that it's a student-centered process where they're using their mobile devices that they bring to class every day and downloading the app so that they can check in and out, very similar to how you would if you were getting ready to be an employee somewhere. So it almost has job readiness built into that whole process. And when we say, students own that process, then if I'm checking in and I'm checking out, the instructors really don't have to do anything but monitor the attendance as it's happening in the classroom. And at the end of the class, there's a small window that the clients let the instructors make sure that that data is accurate before it goes on to the rest of the campuses and reports. So it's a pretty streamlined process where students own it, instructors monitor, but don't necessarily intervene unless they need to. And then at the end of that time, you'll be able to get that into our dashboards, and that can be fed into all the other reports. Last question here is on, there's a few more now. Can this help with the LDA? Yeah, and in some ways it can. Oh, looks like it went out again.
Yeah.
In some ways it can. Basically, a lot of our clients see quicker time to reporting. So as Matt mentioned, if it takes you a few days to get all your attendance records in, well, you don't have a true LDA. What you're getting is a snapshot based on the best available data at the time. So if I've had registrars who have had students on day 13, right? And they need to know whether or not they're showing up to a night class. Previously, they had to go back to the campus, pop their head in the classroom and see if the student showed up. And if they did, they'd be, they can kind of brush their head and say, okay, great, I don't have to process this refund. Now what they can do is they can log in real time and see if there's any students who are missing from any courses who are expected to be there. So we can actually tell you your LDA before the LDA report comes available, depending on how fast your attendance record management process is. So yes, it definitely helps. It doesn't, it gives you a lot more lead time to process those students who are in that 14-day, journey. Hope that answers that question. Will digital attendance in theory eliminate physical attendance record storage moving forward? Yes, that's a huge benefit of, we have clients who used to have, filing cabinets and rooms and filing cabinets set up to store years of attendance records. What did you guys do with yours, Matt? Just curious. Like, did you guys have a bunch of, how long did you have to keep them and what did you do with them?
Yeah, so we still have access to that attendance system that is electronic. However, there are reams of paper from our offsite locations that we have. Yeah, you said it. They're in.
Okay, got it.
Yep.
Yeah, and so
Filing
a lot of the
cabinets
time
that are in small offices packed way back somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, and so we store that as long as you're with us, so you always have access to the historical records. So obviously, not having to chase down filing cabinets in the event of an audit. Like my clients describe, accreditor visits as, this high anxiety, high stress, all hands on deck, find everything we need to find so that we can get through this. And now, as Matt mentioned, there's just this confidence to knowing you have digital access anywhere, anytime, from any device that, with the right credentials to go in and find this information, and it's report ready as well, which is really nice. And the last one here, have you contacted a student in the moment who was absent and they ended up showing up? If not, is this something you planned on doing? And maybe that's for you, Matt. Like once you guys see a student isn't in class, do you guys outreach to them and try to, especially like first day of class for new students, things like that? How are you guys using that?
Yeah, that would be a teacher question. I know all of our teachers have a no-call, no-show system. They have to call. So if somebody's a no-call, no-show, if they don't contact the instructor, let them know they're not coming in or they're going to be late. You know, I know our instructors will reach out to them at some point. Usually it takes a day. If they don't see them in a day, they'll reach out by lunch or so and say, you know,
Got it.
yeah.
And I've actually had clients, just to make sure, you know, give you guys some other context here. I've had clients where, you know, they have whole teams dedicated to groups of students who are brand new to their programs. And they'll say like that student is not considered fully enrolled until they've been here for the first week. Because just because they come the first day doesn't guarantee they're going to be here the second and the third. And when you're talking about retention, you know, those newer students are probably more at risk than students who are already in your programs. So we have teams that access, you know, they don't necessarily manage the classroom attendance. They're not involved in that process, but they definitely rely on our real-time reports to know on the first day of class, do I have a student who is supposed to be here brand new who's missing? And then they've actually had people go out to their house, call them, email them, and they really actively try to get these students in the classroom, because everybody knows, you know, you can't really draw those funds until you get those LDAs updated. So it's really important for some of my clients to be able to access that in real time and intervene to help, you know, keep those students on track. And if it's something where, you know, they get the right reason, then obviously we allow for makeup time and things like that. So you can arrange the makeup time and post that in our system if you want to make sure you're tracking that separate from in-class time. So yeah, the answer to that is there's a lot of real-time value there that clients do depending on the resources they have. All right, so I think that's all the questions we have, unless anybody else wants to sneak one in. So if that's all we got, we can go ahead and wrap up. So for those of you guys who are here today, if you guys want to take, I mean, a lot of you guys said, what does this look like? And I know when we talk about it, you know, does it look like my stapler? Does it look like a water bottle? You know, this is something that's a little more fun to see and play with, to understand if it's really going to, you know, work for you guys in the way that your processes are set up. So if you guys would like a custom demo of the platform, you can leave your information in the post-webinar survey that we're going to send out, or you can contact Jackson. His information's here at the screen, jackson@CourseKey.com. And he'll be happy to set up a demo, walk you guys through the different areas of the platform, and show you what we can do to help schools that you know, just like OCM BOCES and a lot of our other, you know, career education type institutions. Other than that, thank you guys so much for showing up. Matthew, thank you for all the time today. It's definitely been great kind of chatting with you, and kind of saves me some time of having to ask how you guys have been doing. But I'll follow up with you right here after this call. And other than that, we'll see you guys at the next webinar.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Matt.